We're now going to hear from Clark Denman and James Leaman, the founders of Lightfield. First of all, we're going to watch their beautiful film. Thank you.
Half a century ago, we took our first step on the surface of the moon. Today, there is renewed passion to explore for our next human endeavor. Mars, the red planet, further than any human has ever been. We face many challenges: remoteness, no livable atmosphere, high radiation, dust storms, and extremely low temperatures. Before any humans set foot on Mars, we must first design a protective shelter. We will protect our astronauts from radiation with a thick 3D printed shell structure using Martian regolith, which works great in compression but does not perform well under tension. To overcome this shortfall, we have chosen to construct the pressure-retaining parts of the habitat from lightweight inflatable pods. They will be made out of high-precision engineered composites that are prefabricated on Earth. Their elliptoid geometry will be able to mitigate the pressure differences whilst optimizing spatial planning. To create the base on Mars, we will use a two-phase approach. In Phase 1, an ecosystem of 3D printing robots will arrive months in advance of any human explorer. They will construct the protective shield for the base by adopting a modular robotic swarm strategy, a plan that allows for redundancies and enhances the odds for success. Intelligent autonomous robots will have interchangeable roles, from battery storage to scout rovers, logistics to excavational, and even 3D printing units, all integrated with multiple cameras and sensors for navigation. They can reconfigure themselves for a multitude of purposes, ensuring prolonged usage beyond the initial build phases. The smallest configuration is the one-wheeled scout rover that uses ultrasonic scanning to analyze the Martian surface to determine the best regions for obtaining optimum regolith. The digger receives the location coordinates and then excavates the Martian soil. It then delivers the payload to the refining assemblies. Here, large chunks of Martian regolith can be processed down to a finer grain and then delivered to the melter robots in situ. They then use concentrated microwaves to melt the regolith and extrude through the 3D printing nozzle. The shell is autonomously 3D printed, layer by layer, over several months by the robotic system. In the next phase, the first astronauts arrive with the habitation units, equipment, and supplies. The robots now take on their second life roles to aid the next phase. They come together to make flexible mobile platforms that can carry the payload from the loading zone to the base. The convoy begins its journey across the Martian surface to the habitat site. The build commences with a connector module placed underneath the protective shield and ready for inflation. The module then unfolds and self-inflates into its final form. The habitation units are then placed into position and sequentially inflated to form the completed pressurized environments. The circular layout of the habitat ensures continuous accessibility of the habitat in the event of a catastrophic failure. Each connector module houses 3 integrated environmental control life support systems, delivering essential services like power, water, data, and oxygen to all the habitation units. A circular conduit delivers these services to multiple endpoints in each pod. The base will be remotely powered by 2 nuclear kilo-power reactors and a solar farm, located a safe distance away from the base. In the next stage, the astronauts will construct and install a flat-pack, rail-based racking system capable of connecting to the distribution system, enabling spaces to reconfigure according to their spatial needs. This modular and radical design principle has been adopted for all the habitat pods, ensuring multi-use, reconfigurable environments. A Martian base should not just be a habitat. It is home for the astronauts. Each pod expresses its own identity, quality, and character. A highly functional design which places the human experience at the core. Spaces include a state-of-the-art research laboratory, a hydroponic greenhouse, a fully equipped workshop with digital fabrication facilities, the sleeping quarters with gym facilities, and immersive virtual reality platform. We believe that the key to success of human habitation on Mars is the health and well-being of its residents. creating a place where work, life, and living combine holistically to ensure they feel connected to each other, to themselves, and somehow to their distant home.
Okay, perfect. Well, look, I'll jump straight into it. Hopefully everyone was able to have a watch of that, and our 5-minute film working in conjunction with Xavier. And it's sort of, again, an incredible project to be involved in, and hopefully, as I say, we can take you through a little bit more about sort of what we've done and how we made all of those ideas come together. So myself, I'm Clark Denman, one of the founders and art directors at Lightfield London. And tonight I have also with me a fellow co-founder and art director, James Leaman, as well, who will talk you through a little bit more of the technical aspects of the project a little bit later. So a little bit about sort of Lightfield. Let's just jump into presentation, always does help. So myself, Clark and James, so you know who we are, all done. And then, so we've got, so Lightfield London, we've kind of formed of initially 4 guys. We have now grown to a team of 14, but from the original 4, we were all based out in Foster & Partners, where we ended up kind of working sort of for a number of years, learning many, many things there. So for those that don't know what Foster & Partners is, it's an incredible architecture firm, home of one of the greatest living architects, Lord Norman Foster, I should say. Built things like the Gherkin, who obviously many of you will know that iconic nature of that building. We kind of were there as a team of 25 at the time, exposed to many, many sort of iconic things around the world, infrastructure, technology. We learned our skills and our trade, but after a little bit of time decided that we'd go and take the leap, and we set up Lightfield. So yeah, just under 3 years old at the minute. And growing rapidly. Again, we still take on a lot of information in the architecture world, heavily involved in that, and kind of continue to be exposed to a lot more industries, applying all the skill sets that we've built up over the time, expanding the studio in many, many things. So I think the easiest way for me to show that to everybody is just to jump back into another video and show everybody the showroom. Okay, so yeah, hopefully everyone could see that and hear that. So just again, look, it's a fantastic way to showcase what we are doing here at Lightfield. So we're very, very mixed discipline sort of studio, and say a whole variety of things. Let me just hop back to my presentation. Share. So as you can see, we're doing a lot of 3D animation. I mean, look, we love that stuff. We can't get enough of it. We're sort of working through, say, using a whole host of programs. We're using Cinema 4D, 3D Studio Max. We're still using Octane, using Corona as well a lot. But also, say, the stuff that you can't communicate in the showreel, we're doing a lot of ideation. So we really love engaging with our clients. I mean, it's such a pain at the minute. I know the world is a complicated place, but back in the day, when you could have everyone in the room, the magnetic wall, you're kind of using that to the full advantage, engaging with people as much as possible, just to kind of make sure that the idea is resolved and solved at a very early stage of the project, and helping to identify kind of new ways of thinking, merging our ideas. Again, with our backgrounds, we've been incredibly fortunate to kind of be exposed to so many different sort of industries and technologies that sort of when our sort of ideas kind of merge, we begin to create some very, very interesting stuff. We also say graphic design. That's one of my backgrounds. Have a lovely lady, a part of our team, Aurora. She's kind of helping us out with that. We're expanding all of that side of things as well. Again, the motion graphics side, everything begins to fuel into one another. Again, we have an incredible team. So we have a couple of guys that are absolutely making some amazing content. Again, NDAs is an absolute pain where can't show you everything we're working on, but say we work to a very, very high standard. And again, like once we kind of get these locked down, we're helping make those move, and we're kind of, yeah, again, making just very, very beautiful things and bringing lots of things to life all across the world. Also kind of working on product renders. Again, just lovely to get involved with those details, working into stuff, bringing all of that stuff to life with the product renders. As Xavier briefly touched on as well, we have an Unreal department as well. We are sort of getting fully involved with that, and had, say, through Xavier, very, very lucky to be able to create content for the Design Museum. Again, making just kind of a different sort of use of our skill sets and how we can begin to bring that all together. Also, say when budgets allow, we do scale up to big screen, green screen production, just should say, where we kind of say fully involved. So we have done sort of a mixture of broadcast design as well. Obviously tracking if there's drone footage, helicopter footage, linking more into our sort of architectural background, but we can also kind of go up to that sort of level of detail. So the compositing, cleaning up, we make sure all of that is taken care of. And then more sort of recently, virtual production, we're pushing that. We really sort of love being involved with that. So we're really starting to ramp up in that area as well. Obviously, I say, I'm sure a lot of you are kind of familiar with that technology, but we think that it's an absolute game changer for the industry. So we're using our Unreal technology to drive a lot of that as well. I'm not forgetting, again, hopefully you heard the music on the showreel, is that we have an amazing composer, Jack Goodenday, I say another founder, who is just an incredible talent and sort of helps just bring a whole nother meaning to life. So for certain projects, we will go and get an orchestra with the music that he's composed. We'll have that played and recorded, and it just adds a whole nother level to our production qualities. But say that's enough about Lightfield, and so moving on to the main Mars film now. So the brief. So Xavier approached us. Basically, I need to make a 5-minute long film of this really complicated problem. So the feasibility of living in a habitation unit on Mars. It's like, okay, all right. So where do we start? So normally with a project like this, timescales 6 to 12 weeks. That's a good range for us to work with. Obviously, we have all of these stuff that we need to get to, the research, the narrative, the storyboarding, kind of that initial sort of pre-production side of thing, going all the way into the production, where we need to look at kind of the animatic work, the look there, the motion design, graphics, animation, all of that sort of level of thinking, and then allow yourself enough time to render that old chestnut. So again, with compositing, grading, all happening in the last time. The way this one worked out we only had 3 weeks. So as you can sort of visually see, everything gets somewhat compressed. It kind of makes things, you know, exciting, I think is the word. But we have to be very, very organized. It's so it's not impossible, as we've kind of proved. So yeah, everything that you had seen was completed inside 3 weeks. And I know I have shown this on a July to August slide, but it was done with Christmas Day bang smack in the middle of it. So yeah, there was rendering in Turkey that year. So how did we make that happen? We had 4 3D artists. We had a script writer, who again, just a massive crucial part, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And we have an editor and composer, obviously, to hand. So editing happening all at the same time as the music, sound effects, everything being thought about just where everything's completely consolidated. So pre-production. Xavier kind of, again, a couple of meetings over at the HASSELL studios, and with his team took us through all of their thinking. So I know he's skimmed the surface, and he's done an incredible job at doing that tonight. But there was, you know, reels and reels and reels of information. Now, my background's animation. I'm no NASA scientist or anything, but all of a sudden we left this process feeling like, you know, I'm there. I could go and fly a rocket, kind of thing. It's so there's so much that we had to get through just to kind of make sure that we are communicating. That was the key thing with this project. It really had to sell it back to NASA that what Xavier was thinking was the right option. So we really had to make sure that we hit so many key points, but all within this 5-minute time frame. So in addition to that, so we've got the research happening, we're becoming scientific advisors, but at the same time, we still want to be artists. So we're still looking at images that inspire us, mood boards, we're having a look at all of that creative stuff. It's all got to happen in parallel. We also then kind of have our scriptwriter. So I have an incredible guy that then sort of we sort of almost brain dump onto him. We tell him everything, we show him all the visuals, so he gets a consolidated version of what Xavier's gone through with us. He will then go away and begin to kind of develop what he sees as a story. Now, he has a great background in sort of broadcast, dealing with timescales, so very good, very efficient at helping consolidate it down into those key messages. And I think you agree, obviously, having now seen the film, that that nicely kind of ticks along. So once we've got that, we start storyboarding. So normally in our 6 to 12 week timeline, we'd like to have something where the storyboard kind of more worked up. Here's a couple of frames from some other projects that we've done, but you know, the storyboard is a thing of beauty normally, where it will be pinned up on the wall. We will push and pull things around and kind of interact and just make sure that it's resolved on paper first. Obviously, that's the cheapest bit of production before we get into any 3D, before we start doing any look dev. Let's get that solved. However, because of the time constraints, it ended up looking like this. We had to jump straight into the 3D. Now, look, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just kind of, say, not necessarily the ideal way of working. It's kind of, you're kind of beginning to start to commit to space, the movement, compositions without knowing it. It's kind of a funny sort of thing. So we just kind of, with early prototype models, so there was a lot of duplication of model import as well. This is another reason why it's not kind of good. Xavier was still designing, still tweaking. Again, I know he touched on sort of the module nature of the robots. A lot of that was kind of happening. It's kind of, again, just an example that here we're kind of beginning to refine the storyboard a little bit more with HASSELL. So we go through, I think this is version 6, 5 of the storyboard, many iterations. So all of this is still happening, the script's getting developed, everything kind of working around that 5-minute timeline, and all the time the clock is ticking and we need to get sort of animating and rendering. So yeah, we kind of, you know, ends up sort of being that first week of just, right, just get something out on paper, as it were, or in your 3D scene. So pipeline tools, again, how do we make this all happen? So we use something called Shotgun. I imagine some of you people that are in the film industry will know all about this. Now, sort of Lightfield, we don't use this at its full capacity. I mean, look, at the time as well, we were only a small studio, swivel around in your chair, speak to the man next to you. However, it is great for us to communicate not only with our editor, but just keep an eye on the progress of all the different shots. As you can see, there was a lot of shots in that film. It's the only way to make a long film, just include more shots, keep it visually engaging, and kind of get through that. So we can log all the status, shot numbers, just coordinate all of our Cinema 4D files. Again, where we were working over that Christmas sort of holiday period, we could keep everyone up to date, remote working like we're kind of doing now, I suppose. Again, with Shotgun, you have a review tool. It's very nice to be able to kind of work with that, engage with people, with the client, make sure everything's commented on, make sure we can understand what one another's thinking, start marking up additional little comments as the first few frames come out. We then worked with Hassell with their Bluescape screen, which was an amazing bit of kit. Just lovely to kind of see how that's all kind of churning away. See all of the updates on the project as well, and how that's kind of evolving. So again, this very sort of fluid process where they were just thinking, they were having design reviews as we're trying to animate. So, you know, an animator's nightmare that as fast as you're kind of getting through something, oh guys, we changed it. But look, we're very used to that. It used to happen to us all the time at Foster's, highly skilled and highly adaptive to that kind of scenario. So working with proxies, all of that sort of thing, which I know James will speak about soon. So yeah, talking of James, production begins. So I will hand over to James now, who will talk you through that in a little bit more detail. Over to you, James.
Great, thank you, Clark. So I'm just going to talk about a bit more of the more technical breakdown of how we managed to achieve the project. As Clark was saying, the models were being designed by Hassell of the robots and the habitats. I think they were designing these in Rhino. So one of the big things we had to quickly do is make sure that we could import these models from Rhino into C4D, which is what we were using for this project, very quickly, flexible, so that if there were changes as they were designing new robots, this wasn't a massive headache for us to update the models. As I said, we use Cinema 4D, especially for this project. Cinema 4D is predominantly known for motion graphics, stuff like titles, etc. But over the years, the software has developed to be more mainstream, very versatile, and very robust. And it was very well integrated into our pipeline, and all the artists that we had available were proficient in the software. To go along with Cinema 4D, we used Octane, which is a GPU rendering. It's unbiased, which means it doesn't cheat at calculating lighting and reflections. So it's kind of what you see is what you get. This means that it's very quick to set up, and also the rendering speed can be very, very quick because it's using GPU cores. Here you can just see a bit of the Octane renderer in our live viewer. So once we've created this scene in Octane, applied shaders and lighting, you can quite quickly tumble around the scene very quickly. I mean, this was just recorded on my laptop at home, which has just got a Razer with a single GPU. So you can imagine when we in the office with our water-cooled multiple GPU machines, it's like almost like real time. So this was like ideal for this deadline, as we only had 3 weeks. We needed to be able to render very quickly. So one of the biggest things is what are these? What's the film going to look like in terms of style? I mean, we wanted to go with something fairly photorealistic for a large portion of the film. Obviously, we weren't going to get to film quality, but we looked at a lot of films as references, like The Martian and etc. Looked at a lot of Pinterest and mood boards. Obviously, we couldn't do a site visit at that time because the weather wasn't very good on Mars. So here you can see we just did some material and shader tests using, I believe it was RD textures, which were really good PBR materials, and we kind of modified them to make them look very Martian landscaping, comparing that also with NASA images that we had access to. The next step was to create a scene, a set where we could place a lot of our robots and habitat into. So we then looked at creating a terrain. I believe we used World Creator to generate the actual landscape, and then imported that in. As you can see, I don't know if you know that there actually used to be water on Mars. Therefore, you have to see like runoffs off the mountains, etc. So we wanted to get that kind of detail in. So we created these shaders like atmosphere, using scanned assets like rocks, but also creating detailed foregrounds so that we could place our habitat, etc., and still have good detail in the ground. The next step was to look at the design language for the actual robots themselves. Again, we looked at lots of NASA latest robots, film. I know Xavier was saying about we didn't want to make it look too futuristic. Almost wanted it to look like as if Apple would design a robot. So we took, I think the first robot that we had access to was this Scouter robot. So we started looking at that. I think we did about 50 different options for the colors and how it might look, and adding details into the wheel, like the dust almost sitting on top of the suspension arms, etc. So, and also wear and tear. So once we had a design that was approved, we were able to then start rolling that out onto all the other robots as they were being modeled. Here you can see a few more concept frames from once we had like the terrain, we had some of the models, we could start setting some of the scenes of what they might look like. There's a few more. I don't think any of these actually made the film, but you can see they're just kind of concept frames. And it was like how would the robots and convoys fit into the environment using depth of field and etc. to make it look beautiful. One of the other challenges was that even though it needed to show technical details, but explained elements in a very easy to use, easy to understand way. Although this was actually going for NASA, it still needed to target a wider audience of people. For instance, would your mum understand what's going on? And we actually felt that by putting this actually in the landscape terrain, it started to get quite busy and distracting. Therefore, we simplified the background and tinted back the sort of Martian landscape into the black, just to give it a really stylistic approach, which hopefully looks nice and clear. Okay, animation. As Clark mentioned, we blocked out the kind of storyboard straight away, almost in 3D, which then allowed us to start creating basic animatics, either using blocks or the models that we had so far. So by doing this, we could block out our edit fairly quickly within days. I think some of these snippets that you can see here are probably more advanced, but some of them are just very low level. So once we did that, we would then keep refining into each of the animations to add more detail and get it right. There were some more technical challenges though of the animation in this film that we wanted to achieve. One of the first one was inflation of the pods. We looked at robot rigging, dust and fumes, terrain displacement, and the time-lapse animation. Okay, one of the most challenging things of this project, probably for myself, was the actual inflation of the pods. I had many sleepless nights of how to do this, and my knowledge of Houdini is very minimal, to be honest. When I started opening up and playing with cloth and sims, and thought, yeah, I think I'm going to fail at this. So I quickly went back to Cinema 4D and started scratching my head, and then finally managed to find a workflow that worked for me. The technique I kind of used was to build a low poly version of the habitat dome, the fabric material, and did a cloth simulation, but did the cloth simulation in reverse, so it actually deflates and then folds away. I found this easier to actually calculate and sim. Once we calculated that, I could reverse the baked animation and then attach that to the high poly mesh that was given to us by HASSELL. So yeah, that was quite a headache, but I think you can see it kind of worked for the purposes of what we needed to do. The other thing, we wanted these robots to drive around the terrain. They had to maneuver in certain positions, etc. And to avoid having to keyframe all the wheel rotations and height and hydraulics, we basically took a car rig and then adapted the code so that once the robot could then be a single-wheeled robot and drive along the spline, have suspension, could go over terrain, etc. And then once we had this rig, we could apply this to all the animations. We did have a slightly different rig for when all the robots came together into a swarm. Another animation challenge was to get sort of realistic dust and fumes to really make this look convincing and have a high quality look to it. So we used two plugins, Turbulence FD and X-Particles C4D, to generate the dust and rocket fumes. Both have fluid dynamics. We then rendered these sims out as separate passes and then comped them in. Here you can see the dust coming off the wheels of a convoy. We just attached particle emitters to the wheels, and hey presto, there you go, lovely dust smoke. Even though our timeline for this project was super tight, we didn't want to stop at not adding fine little details that we wanted to get into the film. So as you can see behind the wheel, the displacement of the wheel is pushing down the terrain. We actually then put another layer of terrain below this, so that as the collision of the wheel goes over, it pushes the geometry down and reveals the second or lighter coloured sand underneath. As Xavier mentioned about the time lapse, I think this building would take several years to build. Sorry, a habitat would take the robots several years to 3D print. Therefore, we wouldn't have several years in our film, so we time-lapse this element to give that effect. We did this by using an animated Boolean, and then rigged the robots so that they actually kind of sat on top of the animated Boolean. I think we did this over thousands of frames, and then what we did was rendered every 25 frames to give a nice sort of time-lapse effect. Cameras. So whilst we had kind of mapped out in our storyboard and animatics what cameras we originally thought, with the power of Octane, once we developed our scenes, because they were so quick, it's almost like once we developed, looked at the scene, you can almost get a camera and move around the scene and find new cameras. So we did this, and you can see other cameras sort of developed out of this just to enhance the film. Rendering. So the only drawback with using GPU rendering, obviously the speed, but when you do start to put large amounts of geometry and textures into the GPUs, it does start to slow down and also become slightly buggy. Therefore, what we used was creating proxies and low poly meshes for robots in the distance and multiple clones. So we were quite good at optimizing our scenes to allow us to carry on getting creative and getting the project through the deadline. To render it, because we were using GPU rendering, we had, at the time, we had around 26 GPU cards, all 1080 Ti's, and we also used remote servers which had 16 GPU cards. And for the 1080p film, we were kind of averaging around 30 seconds a frame for the exterior views, and around 3 to 4 minutes a frame for some of the more heavier interior scenes. So as you can see, kind of 30 seconds a frame is to fare quite quick. So therefore, we managed to get through the 5-minute film and still be able to render a couple of the shots several times for amends and finessing. Again, because we used Octane, what you see is almost like what you get. We didn't have to render lots of passes, and therefore there wasn't much time needed for comp work. I think the only comp we had to do was sort of comping in the dust and effects work, which again made sure that we got through to the deadline. Okay, I'm now going to pass you back over to Clark, who's going to just talk about the rest of the project.
Thank you for that, James. I say I'm kind of aware of time, but I will whiz through this last little bit. So while all that's been going on, the script has been evolving. There's still been changes. Xavier's been dealing with our fellow co-founder, creative director Johnny Cox, who is sort of heading the edit at the time. So he's seeing all the stuff that we're publishing to Shotgun. There's a whole load of kind of adjustments in the wording, the language. And we must kind of mention about this. The front sort of 1 minute of the film, the diagrammatical piece was bouncing around left, right and center, just trying to make sure that it was clear and concise. The visuals for that were changing. We needed to make sure that it was easy to understand as well, just for sort of all people involved. So yeah, we'd use Premiere, obviously bread and butter for editing, absolutely great. There's versions of the voiceover are coming in. We're having to spice that up. I mean, in the final submission, there was a reason why the credits were only a second long. It was like NASA have got a pause button, they can use it. We're kind of, you know, we won't worry about that. We just need the time to get the story in, get those key points, get that key messaging in. So everything's moving around. And as I say, sound. Now, we have that amazing composer in-house, and it just changes the game. I mean, we have had some projects where we've put the our audience, our clients in tears, just with that emotional reaction, and they say it's kind of 50% of the connection from the video to the audio. I think at times, actually, it's a lot more than that, because it just has a complete power to be bespoke, to pick up on certain things, to trail it across. But so also with that, it's the voiceover as well. Again, the big decisions, like I've got, I think, so used to watching it with that voice, it just works. But we went through different options. Should it be male? Should it be female? Should they be American or not? It's kind of like, it's for NASA at the same time, you know, all of these little considerations that we really kind of, you know, had to pore over, test things out, try it. As a rule of thumb as well, we always tend to get 2 different options of voiceovers recorded, just in case a client, you know, change of mind in any of sort of our other projects. It's always sort of handy to have. So good to have. And as I mentioned, here's Jack at his desk. Sort of, he uses Apple Logic Pro. He just kind of in the zone. So the showreel piece of music, for example, that you heard, I do believe he wrote that in about 6 hours. How he did that, no idea. But he's just a phenomenal talent, but it just brings a whole different dynamic to our whole film and the collective. So as Jane mentioned, with the ability of Octane and the rapidness of just rapid prototyping, moving the camera around, the flexibility of the music, we can come together and really create something quite impressive, just like this view. So bizarrely, this was deadline day. This was from our office. So not only were we working on the red planet, we had this amazing red sunset outside, but so our office here located in Vauxhall on the banks of the River Thames. Those that don't know London too well, just down the road from Big Ben. So bang smack in the centre of things. We love it. Fantastic place to be. But as I was putting this photo in, actually, well, the proof is in the pudding, right? So what you can see here on the screens is the red arrow. We've got shotguns being used. That's happening. Green arrow, cinema 4Ds being worked on. We've got Jack, a bit of music, although he's actually a very talented C4D artist, who knew, happening at the same time. Got the blue arrow, the Premiere timeline is happening, pumped into the big TV, constantly being reviewed, checking out all the frames. And just out of screen, James is still trying to inflate his polygons. So yeah, that went down to the wire with that shot. But yeah, fun times were had. And just then to say that once the film was finally released to the public, we had 22 million views in the various sort of platforms. It just completely took off. I mean, there'd been sort of a challenge, an unwritten challenge with Xavier, was like, it'd be nice to get 1 million, you know, and we're thinking, that's good, but it just absolutely flew. Obviously, hopefully many of you are watching, but a fascination about space and travel, and just kind of, I think it's, you know, there's something there for everybody. And we had, you know, some lovely messages from, I think it was, the best one was a teacher out in the States. I've just shown my little class of kids, like, your video. Round of applause was had at the end. Just absolutely loved it. And it's nice that we have that ability to connect. And also nice, it earned Lightfield London its first staff Vimeo pick as well. So that was, you know, a little proud moment for us as well. Again, it's sort of just such a great project to be involved in. And we thank Xavier so much for involving us in that. And just look, I want to say thank you to 3ds Meetups. It's lovely to go kind of back. I used to attend many years ago until I got really busy. And actually, it's how I got my job at Foster & Partners. So maybe in some ways I've gone full circle, but you know, there we go. I would also just like to say, look, we have an amazing team of artists at the minute, but we're always looking for more people to join us. So whatever you do, whatever you're kind of creating, making, whether your background's in Unreal, Houdini, like, I want to know, speak to me, graphics. Like, we are growing rapidly. So if that inspires you, I say we're doing plenty of other things. Come and get in touch. Say we're looking to relocate to a nice, safe office, and hopefully we can get back on track once the world kind of gets back to normality. and we get up and running. All right, but look, that's from me, just to say thank you to everybody, and I'll hand back to the team. Hope you've enjoyed that.
Amazing stuff. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think we're all very impressed. Thank you, Clark, and thank you, James. I mean, the film is amazing, and your show reel is amazing as well. Great to see so much passion and yeah, and so much amazing work as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Clark. Thanks, James. Really superb. Really,
I love
it.
Team as well. I think that, you know, music is often underestimated. I mean, you said this yourself. You know, I think yeah, a lot of people don't realize the impact that music and Foley can have on stuff. And 3 weeks over Christmas as well. Are you kidding me? This is nuts.
I'd say as James is going through that, I'm kind of like, we did do that, right? Just I mean, the technical challenges.
Then we can continue that conversation.
No, for not. I mean,
I see Xavier smiling away.
He had the other 9 weeks, right? Let's just, you know, it's like. Yeah.
I mean, your render times are really fast as well, though, aren't you? You're talking.
It's changed everything. It's obviously the cards. I mean, we were running the 1080s then. We're now kind of more or less all 2080s and starting to get the 3090s, whatever they are. It's kind of like, it's just changing our ability. And I'm sure all sort of 3D artists, you know, you go from just, oh, this is interesting, and I can look at that. And I think even the shot and the visor, we're looking at the reflection, but it's stuff like that, you know, back in the day, you kind of wouldn't have been able to find and go and explore the scene. You think and you tell the story differently. You're not having to do the comp, you're not having to do all of that side of things. So you get more time in production to experiment, and that's what we enjoy, right? We're artists. That's what you want to do. It's kind of look for the nice things. The team will all get, you know, we deliberately shape our office like a shoehorn. So a horseshoe, I should say. But it just so we can spin around, look at one another's screens, and just get excited by the renders, right? Look, you know, it's our hobbies as well. It's kind of what we enjoy doing. So that passion comes out when a project like this turns up. You know, it is once in a, I say blue moon, but maybe red planet. It's kind of like, you know, you can really go for it and get excited about it. So no, we do.
Well, it was obvious that there was a lot of passion behind the project. It was really fantastic. So I scribbled 2 notes down, and neither of them are very sensible. But the first note I wrote down was, I like your robots. They're very good, but I preferred the one in Terrahawks. I like the ball bearings in Terrahawks that lived on Mars. They had a bit more.
Speak to Xavier about that. That's it.
And the other thing you just touched on it, but the idea of GPU rendering, and in fact, what I was going to ask you is, how would you did you guys consider doing this in Unreal, for example?
I think that potentially is the future. Due to skill sets at the time, yeah, we didn't have that as a viable option. But going forwards, I mean, say the film's a couple of years old now. I mean, what has developed in Unreal is, you know, it is game changing, right? There's no 2 words about it. It's kind of, it really, you know, if we were to do it again, it would be high up on the list for consideration. And certainly the way we're seeing our business grow with the virtual production and that use of the technology, you know, again, we would treat it in a very, very different light. That's for sure.
I think also, just to jump onto that as well, is that the exhibition that we did later on for the Design Museum, what was actually done in Unreal. So we almost like mimicked some of the scenes that we did in Octane and Cinema 4D in Unreal. So yes, to your question. But yeah.
And lastly, I noticed there's a little pop at you there, James, about your inflating polygons. But I just wanted to say that was incredible. Really.
No, he is an incredible.
So well done. It was worth all the hassle it must have been.
Yeah, I wasn't going to be beaten on that one, but it was times where I was scratching my head. So how am I going to do this?
And it was James, it was also kind of like a crucial part of design. It was something that, you know, we wanted to explain how it was done, the inflation. So yeah, it was amazing. Also, guys, I think the great thing was, I think the collaboration is that because we all knew each other because we've worked all together before at Foster, so we kind of knew how to kind of get this done in communication wise. You know, I kind of knew what the guys could deliver. They were often telling me what could change and what couldn't change anymore. I think that was really important, that I kind of understood the technicalities of it, of, yeah, that's still, you can move that or you can't do that, you know, and that was actually continuously talking about that. That was super important.
I know my clients appreciate that.
Yeah, I don't. So I don't really have clients. I have fellow architects, probably the same as you, Xavier. But I just say, oh no, we can't do that. Not now. That's far too late. It's much easier to say that. It works really well.
We try and be as flexible as possible. We always will be. But no, at times it's kind of like if you got half an hour to the deadline, you know, we'd be sensible.
So when I spoke with Johnny Cox, he said that the film was picked up and re-edited by other people as well.
So a lot of big fan base out there, right, Xavier? I mean, Xavier probably knows more about that, but yeah, no, look, we see it as a great honour, right, that people want to do that, and
it was kind of picked up. You know, we brought it out, and we had some good views, and I think we didn't really get the views that I wanted. So we then started to kind of promote a little bit, and kind of I pushed it towards some Instagram posts. And at some point, I think it was on a Saturday, our YouTube video just jumped up with hundreds and thousands of views. And I was like, what happened? What happened? And what apparently happened, it was picked up on Reddit, and people start talking about it. And it was upvoted 25,000 times in like a week or something, only like a couple of days or something like that. And then it kind of just snowballed from there, and it keeps on snowballing. People have re-edited it quite interestingly in a square format on mobile, made a shorter version, made all sorts of things. And I was really annoyed by that, because, you know, we had it so nicely done. But then I learned the thing, and I was like, and then I saw like 18 million views on Facebook or something like that. I was like, oh, okay, I don't mind that much anymore. It's fine. But it was good to see that.
I'm a serious Redditor, so I think the Reddit hug of death is an honor. So I think you did well there.